Welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're taking on something really important and frankly deeply unsettling. We're going to be unpacking the details of a truly harrowing event, something complex that really shook the first responder community recently. I'm talking about the tragic 2025 Coeur shooting in Idaho.
Yeah, it's an incident that brought into sharp, really painful focus the hidden dangers, the ones we often forget about, that are faced by those folks who, they run towards emergencies.
Exactly. It's much more than just another news headline. It feels like a moment that really demands our full attention, a thorough understanding of what happened.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we've pulled together quite a stack of sources to really try and give you the full picture. We're looking at detailed reports from major news outlets, ABC News, CBS, Forbes, Politico, AP News, the main ones. We've also gone through the Wikipedia entry for the incident pretty carefully. And importantly, we've dug into some critical, in-depth research papers. These are from the USDA Forest Service and the CDC. They focus specifically on the realities of wildfire fatalities, which is relevant here, and also the national protocols for dealing with violent incidents, which, well, that's becoming increasingly critical for emergency services.
So our mission today really is to take you beyond those headlines.
Yeah.
We want to give you a thorough, almost minute-by-minute sense of what actually happened that day in June. And then we want to place this unbelievable tragedy within the bigger picture, the often unseen context of firefighter fatalities, looking back historically and even around the world. And finally, we'll explore what this all means, the implications for first responder safety, and what seems like an increasingly complex, unpredictable world. We need to understand the lives lost and connect this one event to the larger risks these folks navigate every single day. So yeah, let's really unpack this.
Indeed. It's a deep dive into something that was, in many ways, just a perfect storm of factors. It led to a truly devastating and, I think, for a lot of people, just an unfathomable outcome.
Absolutely. So let's start by setting the scene. It began as what seemed like a routine call, but tragically it turned into a deadly trap. We're talking about Canfield Mountain, right near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. For anyone who doesn't know the area, it's this really beautiful forested ridge. It's popular, hikers, mountain bikers, people just enjoying nature.
Right. Picture a typical Sunday afternoon, June 29th, 2025. Normally, you'd just hear birds, maybe the wind in the trees, just, peaceful summer day.
And that sense of normal, that's really key to understanding the shock of what happened next, isn't it?
It really is, because at 1:21 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, the Kootenai County dispatchers, they get a 911 call, the report, a brush fire. It quickly gets named the Nettleton Gulch Fire, located on the west flank of Canfield Mountain. Now, on the surface, if you heard that dispatch, it would sound like, well, like any number of brush fire calls firefighters get all the time. Routine stuff, needs expertise, sure, but not something where you'd fear a deliberate attack.
But as we now know, tragically, this call was anything but routine. Authorities later revealed something truly chilling. This fire, it was deliberately set by a sniper. Can you even imagine the calculation involved?
Too powerful.
Using something as simple as a flint striker, this person intentionally started the fire specifically to draw in first responders. It wasn't carelessness, it wasn't an accident, it was a calculated ambush designed, meticulously to lure brave people into a kill zone where they'd be completely exposed.
Yeah, and that just fundamentally shatters the trust, the inherent trust first responders have to operate with, that they're responding to an incident, not becoming the target.
It completely flips the script.
It does. And what's truly disturbing here is just the sheer level of planning. This wasn't some, spontaneous thing. It was thought out. The fire itself was literally the bait. It just completely upends the basic assumptions first responders make, their training, their whole mindset. It's about helping, about mitigating danger, saving lives. It's not about anticipating being targeted by the very community they're there to protect. This act turned a natural hazard into a weapon. Yeah.
And here's where it gets really intense and just horrifying in how it unfolded, because the timeline is incredibly fast. Around 2 p.m., so just about 40 minutes after that initial deceptive 911 call, the first engine companies start arriving. These are crews from Coeur d'Alene Fire, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, Northern Lakes Fire District. They're pulling up, probably assessing the smoke, getting ready to lay hoses.
Standard procedure.
And almost immediately they come under gunfire. Just picture that. The sudden shock, the noise, the shift from fighting a fire to fighting for your life. It's just unimaginable.
The radio calls from those first moments, They're absolutely chilling to listen to. Even reading the transcripts, you can almost feel the chaos, the panic. Crews start making these frantic calls for help, reports of multiple shots fired, and then the message that just sends a chill down your spine.
Yeah.
2 unresponsive battalion chiefs.
Oh, devastating.
Yeah, and you hear one firefighter, his voice strained, saying he's pinned down behind Battalion 1's rig. They realize, terrifyingly fast, they weren't just fighting a fire anymore. They were under direct attack. That immediate switch from fire suppression to just basic survival, it's almost impossible to fully grasp.
And this is where the story gets even more surreal, almost unbelievable. The suspect, who we later learned was 20-year-old Wess Roley, he actually briefly talked to the first crew on scene.
He interacted with them.
Yeah. He approached them, apparently asked some questions about the fire's behavior, maybe pretending to be concerned,
Yeah.
And the firefighters, still thinking it's a normal incident, they actually asked him to move his truck, which was parked, quote, pretty close to where the firefighters parked.
Right.
It was after this brief, seemingly mundane exchange, this weird moment of contact, that he raised a shotgun and started shooting.
That brief conversation, it makes it clear this wasn't random pot shots from a distance. It was up close. It was personal. A deliberate betrayal?
Exactly.
So the scene just devolves, right, into this intense, chaotic standoff. Police arrive. They start exchanging gunfire with Roley. Even the SWAT team, when they bravely tried to get in to retrieve the fallen chief's bodies, they were taking fire too.
Unbelievable courage.
Absolutely. And the level of concern, the danger, it was so high they took some really extreme measures. They actually pushed Roley's own truck off a cliff, just pushed it right off to stop him maybe escaping or using it somehow.
Wow.
And they even disabled one of the firefighters' vehicles, slashed the tires, shot the engine block because they were worried he might try to steal it. These actions just scream how dangerous and unpredictable that scene was. They were throwing every tactic they had at it.
It paints such a vivid, terrifying picture. And then 6 long hours later at 7:40 p.m. after this massive manhunt, SWAT officers finally found Roley dead.
It's self-inflicted.
Appeared to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Self-inflicted gunshot wound. They found a firearm right beside him, hidden in dense timber near the fire line.
Yeah.
And his location, chillingly, they pinpointed it using his cell phone data.
Right.
Modern tech closing out this sort of medieval ambush.
And the fire itself.
Well, because they had to suspend all suppression efforts for hours during the manhunt, the fire grew significantly. It went from maybe 15, 20 acres initially to about 26 acres by the next morning. Left this visible smoke haze over Coeur d'Alene, like a physical scar on the landscape.
And the human cost, just heartbreaking. The 2 fallen heroes were Battalion Chief Frank Harwood, 42 years old, from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue.
Yeah.
He was a 17-year veteran, highly respected, former Army National Guard combat engineer too, leaves behind a wife, 2 kids, just awful. The other hero was Battalion Chief John Morrison, 52, from the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department. He'd given over 28 and a half years to the service, joined back in 96, rose through the ranks, firefighter, all the way to battalion chief. He was also a paramedic.
Wow, multi-skilled.
Exactly. Shows the breadth of what these guys do. Both of them, tragically, pronounced dead right there at the scene.
Just devastating losses. But thankfully there was a survivor, though he was critically injured. Fire engineer David Tisdall, 47. He's a 23-year veteran with Coeur d'Alene Fire.
How is he doing?
He had 2 successful surgeries, thankfully, and was reported later in stable condition, which is, a testament to the medical response and his own strength. The Kootenai County Fire and Rescue Chief, you could see how devastated he was, described it as an unimaginable loss for their fire family.
I bet. It's such a tight-knit community.
Totally. And a colleague of Morrison's shared this really poignant memory, talked about a recent rare moment where they were just talking about, trying to be better dads, better leaders, better firefighters.
Ugh. It's the small human moments that really hit home, isn't it? The void they leave behind.
It really is. And the community response was just incredible. Swift, powerful. People lined freeway overpasses with flags, U.S. flags, Idaho flags, for the procession carrying the bodies. Governor Brad Little ordered flags to half-staff immediately.
It shows you how much these people mean to their communities.
Definitely. A very visible sign of grief and gratitude.
Now, what's truly fascinating, and maybe the most, baffling part of this whole thing, is the perpetrator himself.
Right.
Wess Roley. He was 20, born May 1st, 2005, died June 29th, 2025. Background check shows he used to live in California, grew up mostly in Phoenix, Arizona, moved to Idaho when he was 18 back in 2023. came up to work for his dad's tree-cutting business.
And he was living out of his truck.
Yeah, reports say in the weeks before the shooting, he'd been living out of his pickup, which was apparently heavily packed. Hints maybe it's some instability, or maybe he was trying to stay off the grid. Hard to say.
And the motive. That's the big question mark, right? Still just hanging there.
Completely. Authorities have found nothing. No writings, no manifesto, no clear ideology to explain why. Sheriff Norris, leading the investigation, said Roley had, quote, no known criminal history, no ties to terrorism, just 5 really minor previous police contacts, trespassing, welfare checks. And in those, he was apparently cooperative.
So nothing obvious in his past points to this kind of extreme violence. It makes you wonder, what happened? What switch flipped?
Well, and this lack of a clear motive gets even stranger when you hear this next part. It's a shocking revelation, really. It raises this incredibly unsettling question. Why target a profession he apparently admired?
Admired? What do you mean?
His own grandfather, Dale Roley, confirmed it. He said Wess loved firefighters and had actually wanted to be a fireman. The grandfather said, quote, he was doing tree work and he wanted to be a fireman in the forest. As far as I know, he was actually pursuing it.
Wait, he wanted to be a firefighter, and then he ambushes them.
Exactly. It's profoundly contradictory. A young man who supposedly loved firefighters, maybe even trying to join them, then sets this deadly trap. It challenges everything we think we know about motive, makes it incredibly hard for investigators and for all of us, really, to make any sense of it. What could possibly lead to that?
It's just baffling. And these other details, they only deepen the mystery. We know he owned a 12-gauge shotgun. And significantly, it fired rifled slugs.
Which are more accurate at distance than regular buckshot, right?
Precisely. More power, more range. He also had a .22 rifle, but they don't think he fired that one. Then there's this story from an ex-roommate back in January. Said Roley made some threatening gestures on a security camera, but then just left. Didn't escalate. But the roommate did say Roley's demeanor seemed to change, got unsettling near the end of his stay there.
Little hints, maybe, but nothing concrete.
Exactly. And his Instagram account, it's deleted now, but apparently showed him in dark camo, wearing a mask with Björk's Hunter playing. Again, unsettling, adds to the picture, but doesn't give us a why.
Just fragments.
Right. And his grandfather, you just feel for him, expressed such heartbreak. Said he felt more sad for the people that got killed than I do for him because they didn't deserve it.
Yeah, a terrible position for the family to be in.
Terrible. And Roley's family did offer condolences, pledged full cooperation with the investigation, clearly shocked and grieving themselves.
The immediate response, the aftermath, it was just a massive mobilization. Huge. Over 300 officers, local, state, federal, all descended on the scene. The FBI got heavily involved, took over evidence processing, crisis negotiation, aerial surveillance. ATF was there too, handling ballistics, figuring out how the fire started.
A full court press.
Absolutely. And they declared a temporary no-fly zone over Canfield Mountain pretty quickly. That tells you how serious and ongoing the threat felt, needing to keep the airspace clear for emergency operations.
This is a true all-hands-on-deck situation. Law enforcement, EMS, everyone converging. Life flight helicopters staged nearby, ambulances mustered, ready for anything.
And the community, Coeur d'Alene, even though it's not a huge city, about 55,000 people, the support was immediate and overwhelming.
Yeah, we mentioned the procession.
Right. And local churches opened up for counseling. Critical incident stress teams came in to debrief the first responders, which is so vital after something like this.
Absolutely. The mental toll is immense.
And crowdfunding pages popped up almost instantly for the victims' families. Just that immediate community instinct to help.
So where does the investigation stand now? Still focused on motive?
Very much so. As of late June 2025, it's still under active, intensive investigation. Detectives are going through Roley's digital devices, talking to family, friends, anyone who knew him, reviewing gun purchase records from ATF, processing his truck, social media, looking for any clue.
Anything that might explain the inexplicable.
Pretty much. The FBI even asked the public for any video footage from the area, hoping maybe a hiker or someone caught something useful.
And the big operational change. The police going on every call.
Yeah, that was immediate. The Kootenai County Fire and Rescue Chief stated that now, local law enforcement goes on every single call with the fire department, just to ensure safety. That's a huge shift, driven directly by this ambush. Shows how deeply this has changed the perception of risk.
It really does. And this incident, while it's horrifyingly unique in its details, it really forces us to look at the broader picture, too. The inherent dangers of firefighting, especially wildland firefighting, They go way beyond planned ambushes like this.
That's a really crucial point because a firefighter's primary mission, when they roll up on a scene, their focus is totally on the incident. The fire's behavior, the terrain, the wind, humidity, the immediate environmental threats. Their training, it prepares them for high-risk, low-frequency stuff. Sure, flashovers, building collapses, that kind of thing. But it doesn't typically prepare them for armed attacks by a sniper. That's a whole different world.
A fundamental shift in the threat landscape.
Absolutely. And beyond intentional attacks, wildland firefighters face this whole host of other dangers day in, day out. We're talking aircraft incidents, which can be catastrophic. Severe burns, obviously.
Right.
Electrocution from hidden, downed power lines. Environmental hazards like lightning, steep, unstable ground, causing rock slides or falls.
Just the physical environment itself is trying to kill you sometimes.
Pretty much. Then there's being struck by objects falling trees, widowmakers, rolling rocks. Vehicle rollovers or collisions on those winding, rough forest roads are a big one, too. And then the cumulative stuff.
Yeah.
Extreme fatigue, heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and the long-term damage from breathing in smoke contaminants constantly. These are the expected dangers, the ones they train for, but they're still deadly.
And the mental health side of things.
Yeah.
After an incident like Coeur d'Alene, it must be just devastating.
Oh, incredibly heavy. It leaves deep scars, not just on the firefighters who live through it, but their families, too, who carry that constant worry. And the whole community feels it. That sense of security is shattered.
Right.
The International Association of Firefighters, the IAFF, they play a huge role here. They deploy these specialized peer support teams, offer resources to the affected areas. They recognize these are long-term issues, PTSD, moral injury, severe burnout. These things don't just go away when the fire's out or the immediate crisis ends.
Yeah, the internal battle continues long after.
Absolutely. And if we zoom out even further, look globally, understanding these fatalities, both firefighter and civilian in wildfires, it's so crucial for emergency management policy everywhere. We see these catastrophic fires around the world causing huge numbers of deaths. But there's a real challenge with data.
How so?
Well, there's no single systematic global data collection system for wildfire and especially wildland-urban interface, or WI, fatalities. So researchers often have to piece things together from different national or regional sources, and sometimes those sources are incomplete or they measure things differently.
So it's hard to compare apples to apples, basically.
Exactly. It makes it really tough to spot global trends, identify universal risks, or develop truly comprehensive international strategies. It's a real gap in our ability to learn from these tragedies collectively.
So even with different names like bushfires in Australia, it's a universal problem.
It is. And Australia, with its long, harsh history of bushfires, they've seen staggering numbers. Between 1901 and 2017, they recorded 846 fatalities.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, 748 civilians, 99 firefighters in that period. And think about horrific events like Black Saturday in 2009. That caused 173 deaths in just one event.
Unbelievable.
And what was really striking and led to big policy changes was that a lot of those deaths happened inside homes, people sheltering, thinking they were safe.
But the houses didn't protect them.
Not against that intensity. It marked a shift from earlier fires where more people died outside, maybe defending their property. So Australia's policy moved pretty definitively away from the old prepare, stay, and defend, or leave early idea, towards a much stronger emphasis on early, decisive evacuation, just recognizing how fast and intense these modern fires can be.
Right. Get out early. Get out safe.
Pretty much. Now, in North America, specifically the U.S., the data on wildland firefighter fatalities, WFIS deaths, it comes from several places. NIFC, the National Interagency Fire Center, NWCG Safetygrams, NFTA's database, USFA's database. Multiple streams.
Okay.
Historically, going back to 1910, there have been 1,154 reported line-of-duty deaths for wildland firefighters. And a huge chunk, 76%, happened in the western and south central states, over 30% in California alone. Shows you where the risks are concentrated.
And Idaho, where Coeur d'Alene happened, it has its own history too, right? The big blow-up?
Exactly. Idaho is where 78 wildland firefighters died way back in the 1910. Big blow-up, those massive fires in the northern Rockies.
Fire.
Other major losses include Griffith Park in L.A. in 33, 25 deaths. And more recently, Yarnell Hill in Arizona, 2013, where 19 members of the Granite Mountain Hotshots tragically died.
Just awful reminders of the inherent risk, and the causes have shifted over time.
They have. Historically, things like aviation crashes, vehicle accidents, and those terrible entrapment or burnover situations were the main causes. But more recently, say from 2007 to 2016, heart attacks actually became the most common cause of death reported.
Really? More than burns or accidents?
Yeah, partly because reporting criteria expanded. Now they often include heart attacks or strokes that happen within 24 hours of really strenuous duty. It highlights that immense physical toll, the stress on the body over time.
Makes sense. And on the civilian side, the Camp Fire.
Yeah.
That was just devastating.
Oh, absolutely. 2018, Paradise, California, 85 people killed, over 18,800 structures destroyed. It just showed the extreme, terrifying speed and danger of those WUI fires. It's the highest civilian casualty fire in the U.S. records. A brutal lesson.
And looking across the Atlantic, in Europe, similar patterns.
A lot of similarities, yeah, but also some differences, especially in data. Like Australia, Europe generally lacks official centralized databases for forest fire or WI fatalities again. Makes comparison tricky, but we know significant tragic events have happened. Southern Europe, Portugal, Spain, Greece, Sardinia recorded 865 deaths just between 1945 and 2016 from forest fires.
And specific big ones.
The Madi Fire in Greece, 2018, 102 fatalities, and Pedra Grande in Portugal, 2017, 66 fatalities. Just horrific events.
And the victim profiles there, do they tell a similar story to Australia about evacuation?
Very much so. Most victims in southern Europe tend to be male civilians, and tragically, they're often killed during late evacuation attempts, either on foot or trapped in cars.
Trapped in cars.
Yeah. In Pedrógão Grande, for example, 30 people died on just one short 400-meter stretch of road. They were trapped in or near crashed cars or trying to run from the flames.
Oh, my God.
And what's striking, again, reinforcing the lesson, is that many homes in Europe that were evacuated, even if it was late, they actually survived the fire. It just hammers home the danger of delaying evacuation. Prioritizing getting people out is paramount.
So connecting all this back, the Coeur d'Alene shooting, this deliberate ambush, it feels like something new, or at least a terrifying escalation for firefighters. Is this a new normal they have to worry about?
Well, as Isaac McLennan, the president of the Portland Firefighters Association, put it, being lured and ambushed like this is not common, and it's extremely concerning.
Yeah.
Firefighters, their whole ethos is coming when called for help. Their focus is locked onto the incident, the fire, the rescue, the medical need. They're not typically thinking about anticipating armed attacks. This just fundamentally breaks that understanding.
And their gear, their protection, it's not designed for this,
Yeah,
right?
not at all. Standard firefighter PPE, turnout gear, fire shelters. It's all about heat. Resisting flames, radiant heat. It offers basically zero protection against bullets, especially rifle rounds.
What about bulletproof vests? Some departments have them.
Some do, yeah. Portland Fire, for instance, says every firefighter has access to one. But even those have serious limits. They're mainly for stabbing, maybe small handgun rounds, not high-velocity rifle fire.
And they're heavy. Impractical for wildfires.
Hugely impractical for wildland. They're cumbersome, they trap heat, they restrict movement. Imagine trying to hike up a steep hill, swing an axe or a Pulaski for hours in 100-degree weather wearing 30 pounds of body armor. It's just not feasible for that kind of work.
Right, completely different operational environment. And you mentioned this isn't entirely unprecedented, the Eugene incident.
Yeah, it's important context. While the Idaho shooting was tragically lethal, there was a similar pattern years ago in Eugene, Oregon. Firefighters there were ambushed at a structure fire, one that was deliberately set to lure them in. They took cover behind their engine, got injured, but thankfully no one was killed.
So the tactic isn't brand new, but the outcome in Idaho was much worse.
Exactly. It confirms the pattern exists, but Coeur d'Alene stands out for its lethality and the shift to maybe a more remote, sniper-style attack in a wildland setting, which brings its own unique challenges.
And this whole issue of violence against first responders, it has a history, doesn't it? It's not like this just started.
No, absolutely not. From the very beginnings of the fire service in America, firefighters have responded to incidents linked to violence, bar fights that got out of hand, civil unrest like the Watts riots, active shooter events like Columbine, obviously 9/11. They've always operated on the edges of violence, in a way.
But is it getting worse? Is that the sense?
Well, while line-of-duty deaths from violence haven't historically been the biggest number for firefighters, there's definitely a growing concern both in seriousness and frequency. Studies back in the early 2000s, one in California, one in Philly, found violence towards responders happened in something like 4 to 4.5% of calls, and nearly half of those involved actual physical attacks.
4% doesn't sound huge, but when you think of the volume of calls.
Exactly. It adds up. It's an evolving and, yeah, increasingly dangerous threat that forces departments to rethink how they operate.
And looking at specific past events really highlights this. Like the LA riots in '92, that must have been terrifying for firefighters.
Oh, absolutely. Firefighter Scott Miller was shot in the face. And get this, over 12 documented attempts to kill firefighters and paramedics in just the first 3 hours.
12 attempts,
Mm,
3 hours.
yeah. Crews had to adopt this crazy hit-and-run tactic. They'd literally roll up, spray some water, grab their gear, and just get out of there to avoid being shot. Couldn't stay and fully extinguish fires. It was survival mode.
Unbelievable. And Waco, Texas in '93, what was the lesson there?
Waco was different, but highlighted a critical failure. When the Branch Davidian compound fire started, firefighters were basically kept out of the loop, excluded from the initial tactical planning for the raid. They were only allowed near the fire after it was well underway, and law enforcement said it was safe, which of course was way too late.
So a massive coordination failure.
Huge. It underscored the absolute need for better interagency planning and communication right from the start, especially when violence is involved. Keeping agencies siloed can be catastrophic.
Then Columbine, 1999, that changed things too, right? For active shooter response?
Definitely. At Columbine, you had fire, police, EMS all bravely going into harm's way to rescue victims, even using fire trucks for cover. The aftermath really pushed for major changes, implementing unified incident command systems, putting EMTs on SWAT teams for immediate care in hot zones, joint training exercises between police and fire EMS, and involving schools in planning.
So a much more integrated approach.
Exactly. Recognizing that these complex, violent incidents require everyone working together from the get-go.
And the death of Lieutenant Brenda Cowan in Lexington, Kentucky in 2004, that seems particularly relevant.
It really does. She was the department's first black female firefighter, tragically shot and killed while providing aid at a domestic violence call. Crucially, she arrived before police backup.
Oh, terrible.
Her death starkly highlighted the vulnerability of responders in volatile situations without security. It led to a lawsuit and the Brenda D. Cowan Act in Kentucky, which made assaulting EMS or fire personnel a specific felony. It was legislative recognition of that growing risk.
And Kansas City, Missouri, also in 2004.
Yep.
That sounds eerily similar to Coeur d'Alene.
It really does. Fire crews responding to what they thought were propane tank explosions were met with sniper fire. A paramedic was seriously injured. The fire chief at the time called it a deliberate ambush, the exact same language used in Idaho. Firefighters had to abandon their trucks, let them burn, and wait for police to secure the scene.
Wow. So this specific threat, the sniper ambush on firefighters, it happened almost 20 years before Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah. It highlights that while rare, this isn't entirely unprecedented. These historical cases show this pattern of violence is something fire and EMS have been increasingly grappling with for decades.
So given all this, these increasing threats, what's being done? What are the strategies for better safety? You mentioned national protocols.
Right. A key moment was the Firefighter Life Safety Summit back in 2004. Recognizing these issues, they developed something called Initiative 12. This specifically called for national standards for how emergency services should respond to violent incidents. It was a blueprint, really, for protecting responders.
Okay, so what did Initiative 12 actually recommend? What are the key takeaways for keeping firefighters safer in these situations?
Well, there are several really important points. First is dynamic risk management. Basically, constantly evaluating the risks versus the benefits in real time. Recognizing that sometimes the safest call is to not engage, to withdraw if the risk to personnel is too high.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, improved communication and relationships with law enforcement. And this goes beyond just being friendly. It means actively sharing intel known gang houses, potential terror threats, drug labs, using shared radio frequencies so everyone's on the same page, and having dispatchers monitor closely and use plain language, not confusing 10 codes.
Yeah, clear communication is critical in chaos.
Absolutely. Third, a big operational change. Prohibit single resource response to known or suspected violent incidents. No lone responders. Send crews in pairs or groups for safety, awareness, backup.
Safety in numbers.
Essentially. Fourth, require the uniform application of an incident management system, IMS, across all agencies involved. Everyone speaking the same tactical language, unified command structure, less confusion.
Got it.
Fifth, Emphasize direct, face-to-face communication on scene between fire and police commanders before anyone enters a potentially hazardous area. Make sure everyone understands the dangers and the plan. Avoids blue-on-blue issues or walking into an unsecured zone.
Okay, that seems crucial. What else?
Sixth, and this is really relevant to Coeur d'Alene and Kansas City, fire personnel should decommit and withdraw if violence erupts or reoccurs during their operations. Pull back until police have definitively secured the scene. Responder safety has to come first in those moments.
Even if the fire is burning?
Even if the fire is burning. Seventh, there needs to be stakeholder buy-in. The public, political leaders, they need to understand and support policies that might mean firefighters don't engage immediately in certain violent situations. Managing expectations is key.
And lastly,
a simple but potentially important one: distinct uniforms. Make sure firefighter gear is clearly identifiable and doesn't look like law enforcement, especially in low light or chaos. Avoids mistaken identity issues.
right, those all sound like really practical, important steps. Are departments actually doing these things?
Some are, yes. We mentioned Chicago Fire doing street sense training for their medics, defensive tactics, situational awareness. Portland Fire has the bulletproof vests on every engine, which is a significant investment. But
Yeah.
as they admit, those vests have limitations, especially against rifles, and they're just too heavy and hot for things like wildland firefighting.
Right, the Wildland Challenge again.
Exactly, and that really gets to the core difficulty here, doesn't it? It's this constant balancing act.
I didn't mean what?
How do you integrate these vital safety protocols, these protective measures, without compromising the core mission of rapid response? That's what emergency services are built on. If you slow down operations too much, wait for police to secure every single corner of a wildfire scene. That small brush fire could explode into something catastrophic, putting way more lives and property at risk.
It's an agonizing trade-off. Safety versus speed.
It really is. And it's a dilemma first responders face daily, now with this added, terrifying layer of potentially being intentionally targeted.
Yeah. This whole deep dive into the Coeur d'Alene shooting, it just really lays bare the profound tragic costs when the protectors become the targets. It's such a stark, painful reminder that the dangers firefighters face go way beyond just the flames. Now it includes calculated human malice.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen how this specific incident, while maybe unique in the details, it echoes this broader, growing trend of violence against emergency personnel, really, around the world. It forces all of us as a society to face this difficult reality. Even a seemingly routine call can hide a deadly ambush. Our heroes face not just natural disasters, but human evil, too.
It really challenges that fundamental trust, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
bedrock idea that when you call 911, help comes, and they aren't expecting to be attacked by the people they're trying to save.
It absolutely does. It forces a reevaluation of those core assumptions.
So, as you think about this event, its complexities, its impact, here's something to really chew on. What does it truly mean for our society when the very people whose job, whose instinct, is to run towards danger, often unarmed, focused only on rescue, become intentional targets? And how do we collectively balance that absolute need for immediate, fearless response to the speed that saves lives with the equal and vital need to protect the protectors from such an insidious, evolving threat? This isn't just about Idaho. It's a question that really reshapes how we think about public safety, trust, and heroism itself, everywhere.